Welcome to Recovery Guy Podcast. Welcome.
Recovery is a lifelong process.
Hello. My name is Robert. I am the Recovery Guy. Welcome back to our broadcast. And if this is Thursday, this must be the Checkup. I am so glad that you joined us for this podcast. We're excited to have you on board. And on behalf of John Barker and JJ, welcome to the podcast. As of today, we are at 1,478 downloads of our podcasts, and we could not be more excited. Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you so much for coming back. I know that a number of you do, and huge shout out to Wendy and Susie and Angie and Chaz and Tessanne, my friends who have been so supportive of this mission. My sister Mary, who's always there. Recovery is just like my addiction, is stamped in my DNA. I am an alcoholic. And even though I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, alcoholism is still stamped into my DNA. And that is why I can never successfully use again. Not that I ever was successful, prior to coming into the program, but you understand what I mean. And so, just like my addiction and my bad choices was sort of stamped in my DNA as a result of my drinking and using, recovery is stamped in my DNA as well. Sharing is in my DNA. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. We have a spiritual obligation. And I'm going to paraphrase this a little about what we have is really a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual conditioning. And then what we need to do, we need to go figure out what God's will is for us with relation to others and then go do it. So I'm given this on a daily basis, this reprieve, right? What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual conditioning. So that tells me that this whole program of recovery, regardless of where you're coming from, religious or secular, it doesn't really matter. Our answer is found in a power greater than ourself that could restore us to sanity, to a new way of living. And I don't care if you're Al-Anon or on the side of the table where we caused all the challenges. The answer is the same for us all. My dear friend Susie, who is so involved in Al-Anon and her pursuit of wellness for herself and her family and involved with so many other people, her answer is the same, right? She does the best she can based on her relationship with God as she understands God. And then she goes out daily to promote this wealth and this health and this happiness in everyone it comes across. It's stamped in her DNA, right? As Angie and Wendy and others that we know work in recovery, still slow will, going on 40 years, will be in a meeting, 3 meetings, 4 meetings this week, doing the same thing. Because just as his addiction was stamped in his DNA, so is our recovery. And if you know anything about my brother Will, my sponsor Will, my friend Will, he is a happy, grateful, recovered alcoholic. And we need to be happy, joyous, and free because we are sure that God wants us to be that. If you've looked at any of my previous podcasts, maybe you haven't. Maybe you're new to what we're doing here at Recovery Guy Podcast. Recovery with a Purpose was one of my titles. stagnation that I got from my friend Angie, recovery paradigms, right? I've got some segments in there, 3 segments of Slow Will from the archives. Another one called Look to This Day. Another thing that concerned me was social media recovery. I see so much of it out there, and I'm wondering, is your social media recovery part of something larger? I hope that it is. I hope your recovery isn't grounded or relied upon for a majority of it based on instant messages where there's really no accountability or commitment. I hope it's just a small piece of you relating your experience, strength, and hope. I really hope it is not your experience, strength, and hope. Today's podcast is called Give Yourself Time to Grow. Give yourself time to grow. And you can even take this as a challenge, as I would turn it into a question. Are you giving yourself time to grow? Now, I understand that just because you have quantity doesn't mean you have quality. But as Brian Suits from A Dark Secret Place, he's brilliant in his approach to world affairs. And I pulled this from him, and he wasn't talking about recovery, but I related it to it. He says, quantity has a quality all its own. Isn't that something? Now, again, it doesn't mean that just because you've stuck around, and you've grown out, that you've grown deep. It just means it's likely that if you've been around for a while, the likelihood is you've got a particular quality about you, right? But it doesn't guarantee it, but there's an indication that there is something there. So that's what I want to talk about today. Give yourself time to grow. And as you know me well enough, I'm going to go to dictionary.com and I'm going to look at the definition of the word grow. So are you ready? Are you belted in? Let's get ready for this ride today. Whether you're listening in your car or you're at home or you're at work or you're at the gym, let's absorb this. And if you're like me, where repetition is the mother of learning, you may want to listen to it again and again and again, and then share it with someone who maybe is not as fair with themselves in terms of, giving themselves time to grow. We are a people who like, what we want when we want it, right? We're not a person given to patience. We want it all, and we want it yesterday. And even when we were growing up as children, do you remember when you were in elementary school and maybe you couldn't wait to get to middle school, and you're in the 8th or 9th grade in middle school or junior high, however it was broke up where you lived. You couldn't wait to get to high school, and then you wanted to be 18 for all these rites of passages. You wanted to just grow, and we usually wanted to, outgrow where we were, even though it would have made sense for us to stay there, and especially when you're talking about people of recovery. We were always wanting to be somebody else, doing something else somewhere else. We didn't stay planted very well, right? I didn't even know what the term was, but it's called a geographic. And if you've been in recovery for a while, you understand what a geographic is. But essentially, it's that we're never happy where we're at. So we do emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical, mental, geographics where we just want to break free. It doesn't matter where we go as long as we're going, because we're just not happy with who we are, where we're at, what we're doing, or who we're with. But we're never willing to give ourselves time. And when I go into treatment centers, whether it's a prison or a halfway house or some type of social model recovery home, I always tell the participants that I've never seen anyone get a chip, right? In 12-step recovery, We get chips based on our degree of sobriety, and those are great to get. Back in my day, we'd get, a 30, a 60, a 90, a 6 month, and a year. Then every year after that, now I think you get them every day if you want to. And that's okay. I guess I don't know the value of that, but if getting a chip every month helps you, then go get that chip every month. Just remember, it's one day at a time, for the rest of our life. I even have a podcast on that. But give yourself time to grow. And for once, when we get in here, we need to just slow down for a minute, work the steps one day at a time. And again, what I tell the people in recovery, I never met a person who got a chip for doing their steps faster than the next person. We don't get them that way. We get them over time. And this is what I want to talk about. So grow, right? Grow is the act or process or a manner of growing. It's a development, and I love this word here, gradual increase. Gradual increase, which means I need to learn how to be patient with me, with where I'm at. If I'm going to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood God in step 3, if I'm turning that will over, then I need to be willing to be patient for that gradual increase as God would want to give that back to me as He would understand it would do me best. Remember of the poem that I had on as children bring their broken toys with tears for us to mend. I brought my broken dreams to God because He was my friend. After waiting patiently, I screamed, "How could you be so slow? My child," He said, "what could I do? You never did let go." And one of the reasons I don't let go is because I don't trust. I'm not willing to relax, take a moment, and enjoy the process. Recovery is a process that we go through that over time gives us our indication that we are doing well, that we are on the path that we need to be on, and receive, even in smaller increments, what we are going to receive. It's, one of the things about weight loss, as a former compulsive overeater and obese person, I need to learn to eat more slowly and allow the bites that I am taking to give me the nutrients and begin to digest before I overeat. I may eat the same amount of food, but I do it over 30 minutes, not 6 minutes. Does that make a difference? Do you understand what I'm saying? So here are some of the synonyms for grow. You'll like these words. They're very relatable, and you see which ones fit for you, and then I'll get into my lesson, my example, which is really a pretty badass example today. You're going to love this in terms of giving something time to grow. But the synonyms are abound, flourish, gain, increase, cultivate, mature, produce, sprout, thrive, amplify, rise, expand, stretch, age, advance, and I love this one, become. Wow. All of those words are synonyms for grow. Are you maturing? Are you producing? Are you amplifying? Are you rising? Are you taking advantage of the tide as a boat and letting the tide raise you up as the tide would naturally raise the level of water up, that we can rise with it? Are you expanding? Are you stretching, advancing? These are great words. Gradual increase over time. Here's one of the things that I had to understand. just because my growth may not be evident in areas I want it to be evident, it doesn't mean I'm not growing. You know, I was a person, and to a large degree I still am, because I want there to be evidence outwardly of an inward transition that's occurring within Robert Pardon, right? So I'm anxious because I want you to see how much I care. I want you to see and adopt what I've learned. I want you to see things about me. But sometimes it's like Selling the Invisible, which is a great book on customer service, by the way. Selling the Invisible. Sometimes there's things about me that you can't see, but yet you can experience in your own way. So just because I don't think someone can see it, or you don't see it, doesn't mean that it's not happening. Just because there's no physical evidence that I'm growing, it doesn't mean I'm not growing. And here's the nature's example. I love nature and creation because it gives us the best illustrations out there. Because you can argue with me, and I've said it before, you likely could win the argument. But when you argue with nature in the example that God gives us in his creation, then, that's a different argument. And I'm not so sure you want the argument, because the likelihood is you're not going to win it, right? So here it is. And I've shared this before, but I'm going to elaborate just a little bit more today. And it's the illustrated with the bamboo tree, the Chinese bamboo tree. And if you haven't heard this before, you want to learn more, then Google the information just like I did. It's so fascinating. And I learned this back in the early 90s when I was getting a little frustrated, thinking I should be in a different place when I was about 4 or 5 or 6 years clean and sober and really involved in recovery. I had already gotten the accolades, and I was doing speaking already, and yet I just wasn't happy with what I was seeing occurring. And so I was introduced this story, and it helped revolutionize my approach to my personal recovery and my level of expectation and acceptance. So here it is. The nut, which is one of the hardest nuts on the planet for any tree, and bamboo tree is really from the grass family. All right. Not sure how relevant that is, but the nut has to be planted in soil and then watered and fertilized every day. Every day, are you ready for this? Every day for 5 years before it finally breaks through the ground. Are you kidding me? If someone told me that I would have to be in recovery for that amount of time before I could begin to see results of it, I don't know if I would have stayed. But they told me more of a story, and you'll see as we go along. But it has to be watered, fertilized every day for 5 years before it finally breaks ground. Here's the thing that's really serious about that. And this is where relapse comes in. And 2 episodes ago I did with the help of Scotty B and Welcome Home, Sober Living, gave me some real great examples for relapse. If at any time the watering or fertilization process is stopped, the Chinese bamboo tree will die in the ground. And you know what? Isn't that true of us in recovery? We go along. We're going to meetings, working with our sponsor, working with others, taking the steps, whatever, again, you're going from, whatever your recovery from, or whatever type of recovery plan you have, there's universal truths, and this is one of them. If we stop doing what we were doing, we're going to relapse. And that's just the way it is. If we go back to our old way of thinking, we will go back to our old behavior. As Einstein said, we can't get a new life with the thinking that got us to where we're at. We have to break away from old thinking. Old thinking cannot be a part of new living. And the minute I revert back to that old thinking, I will go back to that old living. So the bamboo tree, it has to be done every day. And this is where the one day at a time power comes in. One day at a time, I need to learn how to dig deeper in the steps to gain more experience, strength, and hope. And it makes it powerful that day so I can use it for the next day. And if you like that, want to learn more, again, go back to my podcast on Look to This Day. So anyway, as we continue to talk about the bamboo tree, in the 5th year, the seed breaks through the soil and begins to grow into a tree. Just like you and I do over time, we begin to grow when we break ground. And man, there comes a point where we just begin to grow, and it's so exciting. And this may have happened. This is the example of the bamboo tree. This may be something that you've experienced in year 1, year 2, year 3. This is just the story of the bamboo tree and how we need to give ourselves time to grow. So there is some variance there. However, we still need to give ourselves time and be patient. And this tree grows. In fact, the Chinese bamboo tree has been recorded at growing up to 3 feet a day. Is that crazy? 3 feet a day, almost 90 feet in about a month. You can literally stand there and watch it shoot up. Through time lapse, it's been timed at approximately 1 inch of growth every 40 minutes. That's crazy growth. And I've seen it happen. I asked my sponsor, and I was getting a little impatient with things, and I said, I want to grow more. And he said, you know what, Robert, don't worry about it. You're going to grow, you're going to learn, you're going to experience certain things. And then he said, somewhere between year 5 and year 7, you're going to experience this degree of confidence, of security, of knowing that you can do this forever. And it'll catapult you or elevate you, rocket you into this other dimension. And then I found out that was the spiritual realm, and I haven't come down since. It says during that 5-year period, if the person who had been planted, if that seed had stopped being watered or taken care of, the seed would have died. But we don't die because we have a process, a program for one day at a time, where one day at a time we're learning, we're growing, we're stretching, we're trusting, we're working with God, we're working with our sponsor, we're turning our will and our life a little bit more over to that care of God as we understood God. We're working our steps, we're working with others, we're going to meetings, we're doing all the things that don't get us tired, because if the planter had got tired of waiting and dug up that seed to see what was taking so long, he would have walked away in disgust because the seed would have died. But it doesn't die in us because we understand that recovery is a process. It's a journey. It's not a destination. And we need to give ourselves time to grow. And I hope you're doing that. The type of growth from underground and moving up gives the Chinese bamboo tree the foundational root system that gives it the ability to withstand any storm brought her way. If you've ever seen a typhoon, and I've shared this example before, or devastating storm that goes through areas of East Asia where the bamboo tree is prevalent, you'll see a storm go through there, winter and typhoons, and one of the only things left standing is the Chinese bamboo tree. Why? Because the foundation that was growing underneath the ground before it began showing its signs of growth outwardly. It has the ability to withstand any storm. And isn't that what we want our recovery to be? Isn't that what we strive for? Because we will experience things in our life, in our recovery, that are going to be very sad. They're going to be very traumatic. They're going to be trying. And you know what we call that? We call that life on life's terms. In the past, we would have drank and used or overeaten over it, whatever our behavior response would have been. We'd have gone out and lost a paycheck at the racetrack or at the table. But we are so foundationally strong that no matter what hand we are dealt, we can withstand it and come out with even more growth. We come out stronger as we are tested by the fire of life. Within our recovery, when we give ourselves time to grow, we rise, we expand, we stretch, we advance, we age over time, and we become that person we had always hoped to be through increasing, through development, through cultivating, through maturity, through flourishing, through abounding, through gaining aspects of our life that we only dreamt we could have. Give yourself and your seeds of greatness time to grow. That is my hope for you. You know, in my time of recovery, I've just asked people to stay. You know how an old timer like me becomes an old timer like me and Steve and Buddy and Scott and Eddie and Slow Will? You know, we don't drink or use, and we don't die, right? And those two ingredients help us to be old timers, right? People with 20 plus years in this program. And there's so many of us out there who want to share our experience, strength, and hope with you. But we've given ourselves time to grow, and we're still growing. We're not who we intend to be, but we're going in that direction. We hope today to be the best possible version of ourselves. And I hope you are too. Give yourself and your seeds of greatness time to grow. Don't look back. Look forward. Always be growing. Always be watering. Always be fertilizing. Always give yourself time to grow through whatever you need to grow through so you can grow out and up, reaching heights that you never thought you could reach before you came into this thing called recovery. I'm so glad you joined us today. My name is Robert. I'm the recovery guy, and this has been the Checkup.